Have you ever wondered why one ancient Christian bishop from a small port city in Asia Minor became one of the most legendary figures in the world? And I'm not talking about Santa Claus with the red suit and flying reindeer. I'm talking about the real Saint Nicholas. When you dig beneath the layers of folklore and commercialized Christmas traditions, what you find is a man whose life reads almost like the origin story of a superhero. And the more you uncover, the more you start asking a surprising question: was Saint Nicholas the first Christian superhero? To answer that, we have to travel back more than 1,700 years to the bustling Roman Empire, an empire overflowing with wealth, corruption, danger, and moral decay. It was a world where the powerful ruled without mercy and the vulnerable often had no defender. And in that world appeared a young man named Nicholas from the city of Patara, a man whose life would become one of the most astonishing stories in Christian history. From the beginning, Nicholas was different. According to the earliest traditions, he didn't wait for adulthood to make an impact. Even as a young man, he was already known for stepping into situations others ran away from. One moment, he was standing up for the poor. The next, he was confronting injustice with a rare boldness. People whispered about him, some saying he was too radical, others saying he was too righteous. But everyone agreed. Nicholas was not ordinary. When his wealthy parents died during a plague, Nicholas suddenly found himself heir to a large fortune. Most people would have used it to secure comfort, luxury, or status. But Nicholas did something unexpected, something that would shape the rest of his life. He began giving his wealth away, quietly, strategically, anonymously. He didn't want fame. He didn't want praise. He wanted to be a force of good in a world drowning in fear and abuse. And the stories that emerged from these secret acts became the seeds of legend. One of the most famous stories describes three young sisters whose father had fallen into poverty. With no dowry, they were at risk of being sold into servitude, a fate that was tragically common in the Roman world. Nicholas heard about their situation and, under the cover of night, tossed a bag of gold through their window. That gold saved the first daughter. Then he did it again for the second. By the time he returned with gold for the third, the father waited up to discover who was doing this. Nicholas tried to escape unnoticed, but he was caught, and he pleaded with the man to tell no one. It sounds like something straight out of a comic book, a wealthy hero using stealth, strategy, and generosity to save the innocent. But this was only the beginning. Nicholas's story would soon escalate from acts of kindness to feats of courage that even modern action movies would struggle to match. When Nicholas became Bishop of Myra, he stepped into one of the most dangerous roles in the empire. A bishop wasn't just a religious leader. He was a protector, a guardian, and sometimes the only shield between ordinary people and those in power. And Nicholas took that role seriously. One of the earliest recorded stories tells of a group of innocent men who were sentenced to execution by a corrupt official. Crowds gathered, soldiers prepared their swords, the men were moments away from death. And then, like the climax of a dramatic film, Bishop Nicholas burst onto the scene. Accounts say he physically grabbed the executioner's blade, halted the killing, marched straight to the corrupt governor, and confronted him. Fearless, fiery, unstoppable. Imagine that, a bishop standing alone against Roman authority, risking imprisonment or death, but refusing to let injustice win. How many people in history ever had that kind of courage? But Nicholas's reputation grew for another reason: miracles. Stories spread of him calming storms at sea, rescuing kidnapped children, providing food during famine, and even appearing in dreams to save sailors who cried out for help. Whether these stories are symbolic, miraculous, or somewhere in between, one thing is clear. To the people of his time, Nicholas wasn't just a leader. He was a defender, a rescuer, a beacon of hope when darkness seemed overwhelming. And then came one of the most explosive moments in Christian history: the Council of Nicaea. This wasn't a peaceful gathering of theologians. It was a tense ideological battlefield where the very identity of Christ was debated. And right in the middle of that storm stood Nicholas. The story goes that when the heretic Arius denied the divinity of Christ, Nicholas couldn't stay silent. The intensity of the moment overwhelmed him, and he struck Arius across the face. Whether taken literally or symbolically, this moment reveals something deeper. Nicholas was not passive. He wasn't timid. He wasn't quiet. He was passionate, zealous, fiercely protective of the core truths of the Christian faith. He was the kind of man who confronted danger, challenged corruption, and defended what mattered most, no matter the personal cost. But the most fascinating part of Nicholas's legacy isn't a single story. It's the pattern. Every tale, every record, every tradition paints the same picture: a man defined by courage, sacrifice, justice, and mercy. And if you strip away the centuries of myths and commercialization, what remains is a portrait that looks surprisingly familiar. A wealthy man who uses his resources to help the weak. A fearless leader who confronts corruption head-on. A protector of children and the vulnerable. A figure associated with miracles and rescues. A man whose identity inspires hope far beyond his lifetime. Is it really such a stretch to call St. Nicholas the first Christian superhero? Long before capes, comic books, and Marvel movies, there was a bishop who lived like a real-life guardian of his people. He didn't seek fame. He didn't seek power. He sought justice. He sought mercy. He sought to live out the teachings of Jesus with such intensity that people could feel it generations later. And here is the most remarkable part, the part most people never hear, the part that reveals why Nicholas's story still captivates us today. Unlike modern heroes, Nicholas didn't rely on strength, weapons, or superhuman abilities. His power came from something deeper, a life so surrendered to Christ that courage, generosity, and compassion flowed through him like a force of nature. His superpowers weren't fantasy. They were virtues lived to their fullest. So was St. Nicholas the first Christian superhero? In many ways, yes. Not because he wore a costume, but because he embodied the very things we still long for in a hero: selflessness, bravery, and a fierce commitment to protect the innocent. And maybe, just maybe, that is why his legacy refused to fade. Because every generation needs a figure who shows what heroic faith looks like. And when you look past the red suit and the sleigh and the holiday decorations, you find something even more powerful. A man whose life reminds us that true heroism isn't about superpowers at all. It's about courage. It's about conviction. It's about choosing to do what is right, even when the whole world looks the other way. And that, more than anything else, is the greatest secret of St. Nicholas.